Welcome everybody to day two of the Behes Gurgaon Round. We are starting with the quarterfinals for our Lions division. May I invite the first speaker from the proposition to begin the debate for us?
Yes, ma'am. May I start?
Please do.
Good morning to the House at large. My name is Noel, and today I proudly stand in support of the motion that this House believes in one country, one language. I will start first by providing a base for our side of the motion, and I will then be followed by a second speaker who will further elaborate, and then the third speaker who will prove to you why our side of the motion is correct. Now, let me explain the keywords here, which are language and country. A language is a structured system of communication used by humans based on speech, gesture, or often writing. A country is a distinct territorial body or political entity. It is often referred to as the land of an individual's birth, residence, or citizenship. Now, let me explain our model. Our model says that one nation should have one language. One nation, one language does not mean regional languages will be replaced by a single national language. Regional languages will remain supreme in each state, and national languages will facilitate inter-regional communications. I repeat, national languages will facilitate inter-regional communication. Mostly, people are using Hindi and English for this purpose. Otherwise, we would have to learn each regional language, or we would have to engage translators as in international communications with between heads of states. We should let people decide how they want to communicate. We think it is easier to learn a single language for inter-regional communication than learning all languages or even employing translators. All states are teaching both English and Hindi in schools voluntarily. Many people are also voluntarily speaking these languages. So I think that there is no imposition of any language. But it is certainly true that a common national language will unite this country. India is a democratic country with diverse cultures. People from all walks of life, culture, ethnicity, religion, social beliefs, and language live in the same country and share each their resources. In the presence of diversity, there is unity. However, we must strengthen this integration by binding the language gap, thus yielding to a common national language. There are various people who live in areas where they have learned only their regional language. This is often an issue because a lot of official documentation takes place in a single language. Several competitive examinations for entrance into various prestigious universities and institutes. Courses offered by the government here are mostly in English or Hindi. Perhaps many talented students may not be able to perform to the best of their abilities simply because of the language barrier. The language gap must be bridged by yielding to a common language which will be compulsorily taught in all schools, and all examinations would be conducted in that language as well. Now, let's look at the more pros of having one language. One language unites the country. Having a universal language brings everyone together. It eases communication. People can overcome language barriers by speaking one language, and it also allows people to engage and share in art and science. Thus, it can be concluded that a common national language will strengthen national integration. I would now like to rest my case with a question to the opposition. That what, I repeat, what is the harm in having one common national language when it is uniting the whole country? I would now like to rest my case. Thank you.
Thank you, Noel, for that wonderful start to our debate. We shall now wait a minute before we move on to the first speaker of the opposition. May I now call upon the first speaker of the opposition to open their team's case for us?
Yes, I'm ready to start.
Yes, please begin whenever you're ready.
Good morning, adjudicator and my dear friends. I'm the first speaker from our team, and we are strongly against the motion. Before beginning, let us discuss the motion that my opposition failed to discuss in enough detail. The main key word here is one country and one language together. This means that an entire country should follow by the principles of a single language. Now, mind you, this does not mean to merely teach a language along with another. This means to oppress all other languages and make the mandatory language the national language. All schools, colleges, national exams will use the national language. This is extremely unfair and very definitely is not believed by this House. In India, the Indian Constitution accepts 22 languages across the country. These languages include Assamese, Bengali, Gujarati, Hindi, Kannada, and so many more. To accept Hindi or English as the national language would kill all these other languages. It will not only destroy many cultures, but will also become a cause for major riots. Not only this, but choosing one language out of 22 to be the main language will create a sense of superiority for those who speak that language. This is extremely wrong, and the term to describe this is linguistic chauvinism. Linguistic chauvinism means an aggressive and unreasonable belief that your own language is better than all others. Hindi speakers will think themselves to be superior, and this can lead to major racism and discrimination. Moreover, coming to the example of the USA, although its major population speaks English, it still has not imposed a national language due to the fear of riots, because it is wrong, and it would be wrong to take the rights from all the Spanish, Chinese, and French speakers to speak their native languages. My opposition said that having a national language will embed unity in India. Are you so sure, my opposition? What happened to the ideals of unity and diversity? What will happen to all the different customs, festivals, and beliefs? Is killing all of the other languages really justifying this ideal of unity? I don't think so. More to prove this point, tensions are already strong between the states in India. We all know how many times states have been divided and how close these are to breaking apart. In language, food, we are fighting over everything. The states are always at war to get divided. Do you think imposing Hindi on all these other states who speak their own native languages will make them happy? Do you think this will create a sense of unity, or will it merely divide India further? The last time somebody did something like this was in the era of Hitler, when he tried to eliminate all the Jews and try to create the perfect world. We cannot have a perfect world like this, and he failed as well. Now, my opposition also, again, I would like to stress that we are not saying that regional languages, you said that regional languages will stay, but how will they stay? How will the regional speakers give an exam? Suppose they want to give a national exam. How will you give it? If you don't speak Hindi, it's impossible to give a national exam. This will completely demoralize anyone who doesn't speak Hindi and eventually lead to riots. With that, I would like to rest my case, and I hope I have made my point. Thank you.
Thank you, Ishan, for opening the opposition's case for us. We shall now wait a minute before we move on to the second speaker of the proposition. May I now call upon the second speaker from the proposition to expand on the team's case for us?
Yeah, just a second. I'm just opening it up. Yeah, can I start?
Yes, please begin.
Good morning to the House at large. I'm the second speaker for proposition and would continue the case. I would first start with my rebuttals, then continue with my constructives. So, my rebuttals are solely focused on the first speaker. The first speaker opposition stated, and I quote, one country, one language means oppressing the other languages. Well, that is false on all levels. We don't say that other languages should be completely neglected and not spoken, but there should be one language that the entire nation speaks for better communication with people from different parts of the country. And also, how much percent of India is Hindi speaking already? And since the majority of India is speaking Hindi, it makes an obvious choice to be the common thread to bind India. I would continue with my constructives. In a country like India, where 22 languages are officially spoken with 13 different scripts and almost with over 720 dialects, there is an immediate need for one language for the entire nation. So shouldn't we have a common language to communicate with our people in other parts of the country? Should we rely only on English as our mediating language? Have you ever noticed that there is a whole lot of opposition towards imposing Hindi as the common factor between all states, but no opposition towards a foreign language that is English? All non-Hindi speaking states in India heavily rely on English as the mediating language. The reason for accepting English by Indians, especially South Indians, if you want to be more specific, is completely for economic and educational purposes. Even the fact that Amit Shah advocated Ek Desh, Ek Bhasha on Hindi Divas is not wrong. He has actually said that it is very important to have one language in one nation, as that will promote unity and become the identity of India in the world. I would like to state that India is the country with the second largest population in the world. There are so many people with so many different views, opinions, and ideas. But a lot of them are not able to come up and express themselves merely because of the language gap and are not able to contribute to the society. A common national language will help the country get rid of illiteracy, since the national language will be spoken by everyone and taught even in the most remote areas in India, where there are more than 20 recognized languages and more than 4 basic ethnicities. There is a huge need for a national language, and I repeat, there is a huge need for a national language. Do we then assume that after 72 years of independence, the country is not united enough? What is that divides India? And yes, that language, the language factor is the only thing that divides India. For a country that often ascribes all of its ills to colonialism, it's strange that India needs to subscribe to a very European notion. One country, one language, the idea that a language represents a notion, is one of colonialism's gift to us. I would like to rest my case by stating that the third speaker on proposition is going to throw more light on this statement and prove why this motion must rise. I rest my case. Thank you.
Thank you for that wonderful expansion on the case. We shall now wait a minute before we move on to the second speaker of the opposition.
Ma'am, may I start?
Yes, if you wish to, please do.
A very good morning to the respected adjudicator and my worthy opponents. I am the second speaker from the opposition, and I truly believe that this house does not believe in one country, one language. As Saint Augustine has rightly said, that the diversity of language alienates man to man. I repeat that the diversity of language alienates man to man. By believing the fact that one country, one language, we will kill the most beautiful thing of this world, that is language diversity. There are obvious disadvantages to having only one language. Firstly, it would mean that all other languages would eventually disappear and along with them with their cultures. The diversity of cultures is one of the joys this world has to offer. India's language policy was built on the principle of unity in diversity. India has adopted this policy because it has learned from the lessons of the past. Past attempts by India to impose linguistic uniformity has stirred regional passions and destabilized several states. In the 1960s, when New Delhi tried to impose Hindi as the sole official language of the Indian Union, non Hindi speaking areas vehemently opposed this. Anti Hindi sentiment was particularly strong in the southern state of Tamil Nadu, where Tamil is spoken. Protests against the imposition of Hindi led to the loss of over 50 lives in Tamil Nadu. As a result of the Indian government's attempt to mandate that all communication between state governments and the central government be in Hindi. The situation was diffused when the Indian government relented and allowed the indefinite use of English as well as Hindi as official languages of the central government. The concept of one country, one language will kill the diversity of India and other countries. And imposing one language on millions of people will destroy the right to freedom of language of people. I repeat, it will destroy the right to freedom of language of people. Imposing one language to a diverse nation like India will also lead to riots and maybe the separation of various states from India, as it was seen in the case of Pakistan when Pakistan tried to impose Urdu in East Pakistan. And do you think, my worthy opponents, it will be easy for the people and especially children to learn a new language and that too common? No, it will not be easy for a 4 year or 3 year old child to learn a new language. If we impose one language in India, it will no longer be a diverse nation based on language, as the other regional language will become extinct gradually. People are still divided over the topic of the language, and it may spark protests again similar to the past. Being a multilingual country, consensus of each state is required, and continuing recklessly with the ideology may ignite protests throughout India and instill harm to the essence of nationalism. Idea to execute the three languages policy by Kothari Commission to compensate the non-Hindi speaking states have failed in the past, and hastily imposing the national language will only result in further conflict. The nation should strive to maintain the status of unity in diversity and embrace the importance of local and regional languages. Coming to the rebuttals, I would like to say, if national languages will facilitate inter-regional communication, then which language will you choose in a diverse country like India? Tell me, my opposition, there are so many languages in India. Which language will you choose? Imposition of one language will not unite. As the second speaker of the proposition said, it will unite. Imposition of one language will not unite, but it will separate India as it was seen in the case of Pakistan. The harm in having one language is that it will kill the language diversity. India will no longer be called a diverse nation. The second speaker was comparing an ideal thing from a real thing. We have seen that when a country tries to impose a national language, the country is separated. Tell me, my opposition, what happened to Pakistan when it tried to impose Urdu? Common language will not end illiteracies. It will lead to more illiteracy. What happened to religion? You said only language divides India. Religion also divides India. And with this, I would like to rest my case, and I strongly believe that the motion will fall.
Thank you, Tejas, for continuing the team's case. We shall now wait a minute before we move on to the other speaker of the side. Can we now have the third speaker from the proposition, the last speaker for the team?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning to the House at large. Today, I, Smayan, would like to continue the case for the proposition. We firmly state that true unity of the country is not achieved by adopting many languages, which restricts proper communication and cordial relationships between different people of the country. Language is one of the most important aspects of our life, and having different languages does nothing but restrict communication and hence hamper the development of those who speak minority languages. One nation, one language does not mean that regional languages will be replaced by a single national language. Regional languages will remain supreme in each state, and national language will facilitate the inter-regional communication. With this, I move on to the rebuttals. The first speaker said that one country, one language will lead to linguistic chauvinism. But let me tell you, taking pride in one's language is not chauvinism. When we become defensive or guarded about a dialect, then people around us find it hard to accept. But dear friends, this may eventually lead to safeguarding our national language from extinction. The first speaker further said that this policy will lead to racism in the country. Racism is prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism on the basis of a membership of a particular racial or ethnic group. So I want to ask you, how do you think that the use of one language for all official purposes in a country will lead to racism? The first speaker repeatedly raised the following points: that one language will mean killing other languages, will mean suppression of other regional languages, and that we are forcefully imposing one language over the others. But as my whole team, the first and the second speaker, has been making it clear again and again, one nation, one language does not mean regional languages will be replaced by a single national language. Regional languages will and can stay supreme in each state, while the national language is used for all official purposes. In the end, the first speaker said that Hitler also tried to eliminate all the Jews and tried to create a perfect world, but he failed. Well, first of all, Hitler discriminated against the Jews on the basis of race, not language. And moreover, Hitler repressed the Jews and other such communities through horrendous and inhumane ways, none of which the proposition advocates. Moving on, the second speaker from the opposition said that we will kill language diversity. But how will we? We are only using a single language for official purposes and to facilitate interstate communication. No other regional or traditional languages will ever be replaced by the use of one language for one nation. The second speaker repeatedly talked about how we will be ending unity in diversity. But I repeat once again, when we are not repressing other regional languages only, how on earth will we kill unity and diversity? Wouldn't it be simply more convenient, easier, and more efficient to have one language for the national purpose? The second speaker also asked us which language we will choose as a common national language, and that this question may lead to conflict among people. Well, the simple answer to this question is that we will use the language which is most spoken in a country as the language that is the national language. For example, since a majority of India is Hindi speaking, it makes it an obvious choice to be a common thread to bind India. As linguistic studies have proven already that a child can learn at least 4 languages up to the age of 6 years. On the contrary, a truck driver from Punjab would not be able to communicate in English once he drives to Chennai or Kanyakumari. And anyway, this is not a debate about India or Hindi alone. Any nation for that matter should be able to communicate with each other and not have to use sign language for simple things like asking for directions or communication. In conclusion, although we are unified as a country, we must also be unified at a mental level, and the first step should be a common national language. Thus, it can be concluded that a common national language will, without a sliver of doubt, strengthen national integration and unity. As Woodrow T. Wilson once said, we cannot be separated in interest or divided in purpose. We stand together until the end. With this, I rest my case. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was the last speaker from the proposition. We shall now wait a minute before we move on to the third speaker from the opposition.
Ma'am, shall I start?
If you are ready, please begin.
As it was rightly stated by Sri Rabindranath Tagore, that if had so wished, he he would have made all Indians speak one language. The unity of India has been and shall always be a unity in diversity. With this, I would like to welcome you all to the opposition side of the house and would try to convince you all that the motion must fall. Languages have contributed more to the development of human brain than any other physical feature in transformation between humans and apes. Language made it possible to cohabit in larger groups, which gave rise to group living, which developed into society. India is said to be a multilingual society throughout history, and the idea of one nation, one language itself is European, while India is a nation that believes in unity and diversity. Just like the Bengali language movement in 1952 laid the foundations of the future division of Pakistan and the creation of Bangladesh. The movement, which was a protest against the imposition of Urdu by the Pakistani government on a predominantly Bengali speaking region, ignited raw passions among a population already dissatisfied with their country's political leadership, which was dominated by West Pakistanis. As of the rebuttals, the first speaker from the proposition stated that one nation, one language would unite our country. But I would like to remind you all that even when the Constitution of India was in the making, there was a debate over the national language being imposed as Hindi on southern India, and yet again, India came on the verge of partition in the form of northern and southern India, but was fortunately controlled and stopped then. But yet again, any attempt to homogenize India's linguistic diversity has met with strong resistance throughout the country. As said by the second speaker of the proposition, that even Amit Shah is promoting the ideal of one nation, one language. I must mind you that just because of that, India is facing a similar threat today. Politicians in Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Arunachal Pradesh, and more South India reacted very strongly against this policy. A prominent Tamil politician warned the government that it should not do anything that would awaken a sleeping tiger. I would like to question the opposition. Do you still think that the policy of one country, one language should be adopted? If you so, then you are wrong. I would like to rest my case here. Thank you.
Thank you, Hardik. That was the last speaker from the opposition, also the last speaker for the debate. We thank you all for tuning in. I would request the participants to stay back, and that is all for the viewers.